What's up, everyone? It's been a little minute since I got a chance to really speak with folks. You know, I typically at times do a podcast show. You know, Bob Wire podcast. I'm Bob, obviously, but I don't have all the recording equipment that's typically supplied by my man Justin. So I'm just doing this just off the whim. It's time to have like a little bit of a conversation as far as I'm concerned. So, anybody taking the time out to listen to it, I appreciate it. I just want to add my 2 cents to the ether. Everybody knows we had the government shutdown. It's been going on for, I believe it was over 40 days or whatever. And there's been a lot of pain and strain with a lot of folks dealing with this shutdown. But one thing that I kind of always learned was that anything that's worth having, you gotta like struggle, and there's a bit of suffering that's attached to it, right? And that was going on, and I don't desire anybody suffering. You know what I'm saying? Just to get the basic essential things that I believe, as a black progressive, as I claim myself to be, deserves. And that's having the ability to not have food insecurities, healthcare insecurities. Basically, you're stripping people of their integrity, and their self-respect when those two things are on the table, being conditioned and being kicked around like a political football. And unfortunately, that's what happens, right? And I know a lot of people want to say, well, it's happening on both sides. And I'm a person that I don't like to get into the conversation really in regards to, and when I say I don't want to get into the conversation, it's not like I'm running from the conversation. It's just that I don't like to waste my time on idiotic conversations. And when people come in and say things like, oh, well, it's happening on both sides. Both sides are bad. I don't do false equivalency, and I don't engage in that. I know the party on the left, which is where I typically vote, is not perfect. I never said it was, and I usually have rapid fire for them as well. But I'm not going to pretend that they're equivalent to the horrendous evils that goes on the right. As a black person or a person of color, and even as a working class white person, the Republican Party is obviously not for you, whether you want to know it or not. Because there's a lot of black and brown brothers out here, and sisters, who wants to affiliate themselves with the right. And there's a couple of things that might be going on in that particular case, as far as I'm concerned. First, maybe there's just being ignorant, right? Ignorant to what that party actually perceives you as. And I could understand the ignorance, right? Because ignorance could be cured with knowledge, right? As you obtain knowledge, you could cure the elements of ignorance. So it's no shame in that. Then we have sometimes a more deeper emotional issue, and that's the Stockholm Syndrome. That's maybe the hate of yourself and anyone that looks like you or anyone within your diaspora, right? And that's a deeper issue that is not going to be just remedied with more data, so to speak. I'm pretty sure that's going to require some sort of psychoanalyst. Maybe you have to see a therapist and resolve that in yourself, right? So that's not always going to be resolved, obviously, with greater data. And thirdly, you have the grifter, right? You're maybe the individual that's probably receiving some form of capital gain on the back of oppressing people that look like yourself or within your same social class, right? So those things also take place. So there's quite a few reasons, and sometimes I can understand with some folks, we don't even want to take the time to figure out why they're on that side of it. You just say these are fools and keep it moving. And I'm not upset with that. It's fine, because not everybody could sit there and want to analyze the black or brown or working class white conservative mindset, because it could get real sticky down there trying to figure that out, right? But I want to talk about the 8 Democrats that buckled and voted along with the Republicans to open up the government. I want to first go off, tell you the names of each of those 8 senators that did that. Bear with me, I'm just looking at the PC. First trader up, Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois. Secondly, Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia. Senator Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire. Just bear with me. And then you got Senator Angus King of Maine. And you have Senator Jackie Rosen of Nevada. And you have Senator Catherine Cortez Masto of Nevada. And you have the mental case in Pennsylvania, Senator John Fetterman, who needs to go. Now, a lot of these, well, all of these senators pretty much that did this, I'm sure that they had their donors screaming in their ear, you start voting along the lines that I need you to and get the government back open, because it's going to start hurting my pocketbook. And they're going to always bow to the knees of their donors, because they're not doing the business of the citizenry in which they put them in office and they're supposed to represent and fight for. Not by what they did. We just had the big blue tsunami that took place on the Tuesday election. You know, everybody needs to applaud themselves that came out, pressed it, voted, and eradicated everybody on the right. And I was so proud of that. That was huge. That was a message that we sent, especially coming off the No Kings parade and then to fall right into that. And it felt like for once that the Democratic Party had some form of momentum going. And then these 8 people right here that are posing as they're on the left would go and vote that way. But as I said before, they did this strategically, in my opinion, because none of them are going to be up for election in the upcoming midterm. I think most of them, a lot of them, the next time they're going to be put up for election is in 2028, some 2030. And they're just hoping, well, expecting that the public at large will forget by that time what they exactly did. And that's why I think that every senator that I just mentioned here, that's from your particular state, you need to make mental note of that. And these people need to be primaried, and they need to be sent packing, because they're not serving the citizenry or the public as a whole with what they did. I know right now, like, a lot of people feel like, oh man, see, that's why I don't even waste my time. I don't go out and vote. I don't even get involved. These Democrats are weak-kneed. It's a waste of time. And we got to remember, listen, that's what they want us to feel is defeated, right? And we have to push back against that, right? We have to say that in spite of we taking one step forward, they push us two step back, we're going to just keep pushing. And one of the most important ways for us to push back is in the poll. Is in a poll booth when it's time to go vote. That's one of the most important things we need to do, right? Is to exercise that right to vote. And that's our civic duty. That's something that we're supposed to engage in, and that's something we're supposed to run to the poll. Man, I'll vote for anything. I vote for anything. I'll vote for the local dog catcher in my particular town or in my municipality. Any voting that's going on, anyone up for election, I'm there for it. And that's the way we have to be. We have to be an educated voting base, because that's what's scary to the right. It's not a secret. Listen, the Heritage Fund spoke about it. You know, the authors of the 2025 project, which is basically this Christian nationalist takeover of the government that's completely race-based, you know, to reinstall, as far as they feel, white supremacy to be the cornerstone of American government. You know, that's basically everything in the bill, and also to rule and reign over black and brown folks, and also to control the anatomy, the women's anatomy. You know, that's always been a focal point, and they've always said it, and they've always known it. If you keep the voting populace down, you're going to always install another Republican in place. Whenever there's a big turnout for vote, you typically see people on the left win. And that should kind of tell you something. That tells you that there are more people in this country that are left-leaning than right-leaning. But I know at times the Democrats don't do a great job at messaging and getting people to come out and push for the vote. But unfortunately, we can't depend on them to excite us, right? To come out and do what we have to do, right? They're not there to hype us up. They shouldn't be our hype men, you know, to get us to come out. That should just be an automatic. Now, and I know people are going to say, well, I'm tired of these same old traditional politicians that are there, and it's not much, and I'm tired of voting for the lesser evil. Well, listen, even if you don't vote, you're voting, right? That's just the way it is. You cannot remove yourself from the politics of elections. Elections have consequences, and and the consequences will find you wherever you're at. I don't care where you are. It's going to find you, right? But I think what people don't realize, the more important thing that goes on here, is the importance of the primary, right? That's when you really do your dog fighting, and you fight to make sure that the best candidate comes out of your party, the person that will excite you to vote, so that you don't have to be left with certain politicians like your typical Chuck Schumer, you know, your Nancy Pelosi's, you know, people that are not giving you any reasons to feel like you want to roll out and wait on the line for however long just to ensure that they're installed in office, right? And I get it. But the primary is where it's important at. That's where you pull out the best candidate. You know, it's like wrestling terms. You have a Survivor Series match. You put everybody in there, and whoever comes out and survive, that's probably the best candidate to go forward and fight on behalf of you. Take care of their constituency. But a lot of us don't really go out during the primaries. You see most people come out during, the major elections or whatever, right? Or the general election per se. And so that's what matters anyway. No, it matters at the beginning. It matters at ground zero, which is at the primaries, right? Those things are what's important on putting a face forward to make you inspired to come out and engage in voting. So like me, myself, former New Yorker, I currently reside in Jersey, East Orange in the house. That's where I'm at. And they had the election for governor here. And it was Jack Tillerelli, who was the obvious Republican candidate, and it was a moderate Mikey Sherrell. And she wasn't somebody that I was inspired or had it, or I would even deemed as a progressive. She's liberal at best, which doesn't mean nothing to me, right? But I understood the assignment. I understood that it's like in the terms of football. You don't want the team to be in good in good field position, so you punt the ball, you kick it off. So I punted, and I went, and I had to vote for her. Because at the minimum, the way I looked at it is that even if you have your most basic vanilla, moderate Democrat, at least they're flexible enough where you could apply pressure, and they're malleable. They may be willing to bend more. When you got someone in from the right, they're rigid. They have their talking points. They're locked in. They have this one-track mindset that you're not going to be able to alter or change. So that's why even when you don't have a very exciting Democrat running at that moment, it doesn't matter. Get them in there, and then you start applying the pressure. You see, a lot of times we think as voters that our job begins and ends in the voting booth, and it doesn't. That's where it begins, right? So the vote is the first thing that happens. That's the first part of the job. Now the real work comes after they become elected, and then you start pressuring them to do the business of their constituency, right? And you keep applying the pressure, and you try to come out, try to make some town halls wherever they're at. Let your voice be heard. It's important. You meet them where they're at, and you let them know they work for you, not the other way around. See, the one thing that I love about being on the left is that being on the left, we don't take our political leaders and herald them to standards of being anointed by Christ himself, and as if he could do no wrong, and God put this person here to lead, and we worship at the altar of that particular politician. We don't have that monotheism, I believe it's called, mindset, right? You know what I'm saying? This one person's the ruler, and they almost feel like they want to live in a theocratic type of government. God installed this person. We got to listen to them. That creates the cult-like mentality. That's why MAGA exists, right? If you talk to your basic MAGA supporter, right, they typically don't know politics very well. And I'm not sitting up here saying that I'm a political scientist myself, but I have yet to run into a MAGA supporter that I don't own politically. If we engage into a verbal tirade or a debate, I know I'll own them and stomp their ears together, politically speaking, verbally. I'm not condoning violence, guys. but you know what I'm saying. So I run to discussions to have with them because I know it's going to be a quick knockout. It's going to be like a Mike Tyson fight in the late 80s, man. In and out, boom, sleepy time. Because they don't understand politics. What they understand is identity politics. And that's a big difference there for a lot of our viewers that may not know what identity politics is. They base things off of what you identify as. Most of them identify on the side of being white Christian nationalists, right? Totally different from your minority Christian, whether you know it or not, right? See, I grew up as a Baptist. You know, that's in my household. My grandma made sure we all went to church every Sunday, Greater Fowl Chapter, and our reverend was Reverend Simmons. He had all the ruby ash rings, you know, slick hair. He would hoop and holler, man. He put on quite the show. And that's a whole different other experience in being a Christian as opposed to the white evangelical Saxon Protestant form of Christianity, right? Like it's a totally different situation. They are under the mindset that they are chosen. They are the ones that are the elite. They're the ones that should be in power, right? And anybody shades south of theirs are the underlings or servants, right? Barely human in their eyes. And they typically, they call themselves Christian, but they barely know anything about the good book. Most of them probably haven't read the entire Genesis when you run into these MAGA people that claim to be these great Christians. They probably never went through one of the 66 books that exist in the Bible. They're a complete joke, right? But they would go and they would hear their pastor tell them things. And then they walk away thinking that, oh, this is it. This is, you know, they're not great critical thinkers. They won't go and look up and research the information that they overheard. They take it literally as gospel, right? And that bleeds into their politics. And that's why they have their leader, the orange turd, there, and all of a sudden they herald him to a position of being a Christian. Donald Trump, really? The man that said he read one of his favorite verses is in 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians. And they never held his feet to the fire. A man that's been in multiple divorces, cheated on every one of his wives, right? A man that said horrendous things, you know what I'm saying, about women and wanting to engage with them in ways, grabbing them obviously by their, you know what it is. And they overlooked all of that. And yet somehow they were able to have this cognitive dissonance take place and still in their mindset hear all the negative, but yet saying, he's a good Christian man. And he's going to do our bidding. And that's a whole other conversation that I want to eventually get into, is the dangers of the fact of us involving our faith, for those who have faith, involving your faith in your politics. Because those two things should be exclusively in separate beds. You should never be going to the poll to vote, and on your mind is what commandment this person is breaking, or that, oh, I don't agree with gay marriages. It's an abomination to God, right? So I'm against that, and I'm against abortions, and this is wrong, and come with these single issues that gonna affect you negatively when you go vote for the right, because they co-opted the Christian faith and telling you they're the party of Christianity, right? Because once again, they depend on the fact that most of their Christian followers are not educated in the area of the very Bible they worship, right? Because they'll say, you know, I've heard many Christians say, oh, you know, well, it's not that I said it, but, you know, God used the word an abomination when speaking with a man laying down with a man, and so forth. But that's not the only time God used the term abomination, you know? He used the term abomination along with you eating shellfish. So all you seafood lovers that love pulling up, eating them scallops and the shrimps and the crabs and the lobsters, that's an abomination. You might as well went off and had gay sex, according to the word. You know, I didn't say it, the word said it. You know, that's how they do, by the way. Like, whenever they don't want to say the ugly things, they'll say, oh, well, I didn't say it. You know, the book said it. So, yeah, so the book said that, right? So every time you put that shrimp down your mouth is equivalent to putting, if you're a man, putting another man's member down your mouth, right? Same thing. I mean, same effect. Same effect. It's all it says, an abomination. It's all the same. It says if you mix certain linens, maybe wool or cotton or whatever, that deemed as an abomination to God, right? So a lot of people need to kind of take a little bit of a step back when they want to include their religion or faith into their politics. You should really practice separation of the two, right? Because what I always say to people, they're like, oh, I'm against gay marriages. Well, then just don't marry a gay person. How about that, right? You don't have to like gay marriages. You don't have to engage in it. It's none of your business. And yet, they're the same ones that would talk about the fact that God gives us free will, right? But they're always looking to restrict someone's free will when it goes against the word, right? As far as they're concerned. They're like, oh, I don't want them to have the right to get married. Well, you're violating someone's free will. God even doesn't violate someone's free will, so who are you to violate their free will, right? There's a lack of critical thinking, a complete absence of it when we're dealing with people on the side of the right. They struggle in the areas of critical thought. And, you know, you would think that being able to critically think is just a basic thing, but no, it's not. I mean, I still, to this day, still try to learn and operate in critical thought and not get myself propagandized by foolish talks, right? Because it's very easy. And these people in power, we've been studied. We're like sheep. They understand how to push and nudge and say certain things to either excite you or put you in a state of fear and motivate you to do things. See, on the right, they operate in fear-mongering. That's why you have idiots there thinking that there's going to be Sharia law in New York because they have a Muslim mayor that just got elected. Big shouts to Zohran Mamdani. And people are sitting up there saying, oh my God, women are going to get stoned and people are going to get beheaded. And I mean, just ridiculous talking points. Stupid. Completely stupid. Most of them don't even understand what Sharia law is. It's the daily practices of their faith. And the teachings of the Quran. So you do the same in reverse with Christianity. So is there Christian Sharia law going on here? Come on, like, give it a break. Maybe educate yourself. You heard them say the word Sharia law, and that's sent off bells inside your head, you know, and it raised your IQ slightly above room temperature, and you got scared. That's people on the right I'm speaking about. And then they start saying, oh my God, the rich business owners are going to flee from New York. And what are we going to do? Oh, these poor billionaires. We gotta protect them. Well, I'm barely able to put food on the table for me and my family. They've convinced you that the billionaires are being mistreated. That's how good these people are. These are the things we got to concern ourselves with, you know. It's when you hear that propaganda talk from people, one thing that I do in particular, I take people to task. When you say certain things, I tell you, cite where you got your information from. Where's the data at? Oh, you heard that? The hell you mean you heard that? That doesn't mean anything. Oh, that's what they say. Well, who's they? You got to press people when they say extraordinary things like that. Whenever you hear something that sounds just like, wow, really? You got to press them. And I don't care who they are. They could be your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your cousin, your aunt, your uncle, your wife, your husband, your children, your parents, your friends, your associates, co-workers, even your pastor. Doesn't matter. Nobody is above that level of questioning when they make extraordinary claims. And that's something that we got to get into the practice of more. Pressing people on that. You know, I had a conversation because I won't mention their name. It's a former coworker, but slash friend also. I was talking with his wife yesterday, and they so happen to be Jamaican. And we all know, we send our prayers out to Jamaica. There's a lot of people out there struggling right now due to the Category 5 hurricane that hit them. You know, pray for them, and anybody that's capable of sending any kind of aid or whatever, try to find a source where you could maybe send aid to help them out, because they're in a struggle right now. Our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean there. But I heard my co-worker slash friend wife talk to me on the phone, and like I said, they are of Jamaican descent. And she made a comment about that, you know, these people in power created this storm, and they have the ability to do these things. And she's an older lady, older than me. And, you know, my grandmother always raised me to respect my elders. But in the same token of time, I could respect you and correct you at the same time, right? And sometimes I was getting that mixed up. So I would hear the elders say things that are not factually sound, right? And not press back because it was deemed as disrespectful. And I think that that's not the way we should approach things anymore. No. You could be respectful while checking someone. And I told her, and I said, what would make you believe that human beings have the ability to control weather that way? She's like, oh, no, they could. And that's, where's your source? I've never heard any any meteorologists, any scientists, or anybody of that nature state that we have the ability to weaponize weather to certain areas. She's like, no, it's so that they could control Jamaica. And so I said to her, I said, well, let's start critically thinking. I said, and now who is this? The powers that be? Are you speaking about the European powers, American? Everything? She said yes. And I said, okay, the usual suspects, right? I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, technically speaking, they're a former colony of England. And England and America and most European countries still have stakes and controls within Jamaica right now. They don't need to send a storm to control them. The majority of their economy is based off of tourism. And Jamaica is not a threat to the system. So why would they send a storm? And that's if I'm even conceding that such a thing could exist, which obviously it doesn't. Listen, guys, we don't have the ability to take one flu shot that would keep us from the flu forever, right? We don't have the ability for that, right? Every year there's another flu shot, right? Because it's a different strain of flu. You know, when the flu gets inside each person's body and then it gets passed and transmitted, it evolved. It became different. It becomes stronger or whatever, mutated, right? That's why they got to constantly keep up with different vaccines, right? So we can't control something like that, right? But yet we could control a goddamn hurricane? Really? Really? I don't think people stop to listen to the idiocy of what they be saying. I don't know. I think it's just that sometimes people feel like I don't want the truth to get in the way of a good story. There's not a great emphasis on truth, right? And facts. And that's something that's wiltering away over time. And that's something that we got to get back to the basics of. We have to be very demanding of facts and truth. Facts and truth is what's got to stand. And if you catch people operating outside of facts, you got to pull their coat to it. You got to be a person that says, no, I exclusively traffic in facts. I don't just listen to propaganda messaging and take it as a fact. That's why even me being, quote unquote, the Democratic Party, because I have no other party that I could really affiliate with or caucus with, right? Especially as a black man in America, there is no space for me on the right. Not that I would want to be there because I don't share the same ideology as them. You know? That's the party of being unempathetic to human needs. That's the party of complete capitalists. I so happen to be in a party of empathy. I'm in a party of a democratic socialist form of government where certain needs are taken care of and it's a right, like health care, education, which there's so little emphasis on in this country. And you have to understand that that's done with intention. And that's why Donald Trump said he loves the ignorant. And yet these people still fall over themselves to follow him and don't realize he's literally insulting them. But what keeps them going? There's a lot of different ideas on why they're there. I got quite a few, you know. I mean, a lot of them are racist. They're misogynists. They dwell in xenophobia. Pretty much anyone on the right. And I'm not saying, I'm not an absolutist, right? So I'm not suggesting that every Republican is a racist. But I know every racist is a Republican. I mean, that's just a fact. So you do with that what you will. But I wanted to take some time out, chop it up. I'm kind of at the 40-minute mark. Been a little bit of a long video. I don't know. I'm going to see. I might try to do more of these, get a chance to stop and just have a conversation. Everybody keep your eyes peeled. Stay politically minded. And peace.